Bastish here for 64K, and welcome to another episode of the Commodore 64 and...
Welcome to 64K. Hosted by Bastish B.
And welcome back. So on today's episode we're going to have a look at all three Dare games on the Commodore 64. And if you don't know anything about this character, let's take a little brief look at the history of him. So, Dare is a British comic book science fiction character created by Frank Hampson in 1950 for Eagle Comics, which was a British comic book publication. Style and story-wise, you can think of him as a bit of Flash Gordon with a large dash of Buck Rogers, with a very distinctive 1950s sci-fi aesthetic. Dare's exploits would usually involve him trying to stop his arch-nemesis, the Mekon. This dodgy brainiac-type alien dude who with his treen henchmen are always trying to take over or destroy something. He's basically a Green Ming the Merciless. After the demise of Eagle Comics, Dare next resurfaced in the pages of 2000 AD in 1977 and again in 1980s with the relaunch of Eagle Comics. We jump ahead a few decades to 2007 where he reappears in a miniseries for Virgin Comics written by the crazy Garth Ennis, who is most well known for the Preacher series. Virgin founder Richard Branson is a massive fan of the character, and their ties to Dare are deep, encompassing comic books and all the games we're about to cover. Okay, so let's have a little look at what three games we're going to be covering today. We have 1986's Dare, 1988's Dare 2, The Mekon's Revenge, and 1990's Dare, The Escape, all published by Virgin Games on the Commodore 64. And briefly before we get started, I've got a few other episodes in this series already, so please check them out if you're interested in this type of content. And now let's start looking at today's games. 1986 was a year of diversity that saw the debut of Takeshi's Castle on Japanese television that turned the salaryman's pain into our pleasure. Dragon Quest was released on the Famicom and became the actual blueprint for all JRPGs going ahead. And Ferris Bueller arrived in the cinemas and made a character that was a lying, manipulative car thief seem so damn likable. But most importantly of all, Dare, Pilot of the Future, was released on the Commodore 64 by Virgin Games. The story is simple. The Mekon demands Earth's surrender to him, or else he will launch a massive asteroid at it and kill everyone. Dan manages to land on the asteroid undetected, and it is his job to destroy the thing before it plows into Earth. The game takes the form of a LucasArts type adventure game, mixing in light puzzle elements and action throughout. As the game starts, you're greeted with this excellent music track that sets the mood for adventure perfectly, and it's my favorite track of all the Dare games. This game is one big maze as you make your way down to the heart of the asteroid, aka the Mekon's lair, solving puzzles, beating up treen henchmen, and rescuing the imprisoned scientists. The graphics are nice, big, and colorful, capturing that look of a 1950s comic book style. Also, the description menus that pop up look just like the description panels in any old comic book. It's a really nice touch. The environments also change drastically as you go deeper underground, from the asteroid surface to the caverns, the prison complex, and the Mekon's high-tech lab. I feel the gameplay in this was way ahead of the time. The puzzles are very logical and well thought out, and by holding down the joystick button and pushing in different directions determines what to do with an object. It works really well, and Sierra-style adventure games only started using this kind of method way later. The weakest part of the game though is the brawling sequences. Fighting the treens is a bit hit and miss, literally. Holding down the joystick button and mashing the controller up into the top corner rapidly gets the job done. But don't even bother trying any other moves, you'll just die. And you only get one life, by the way. If you can avoid a treen, do it. It'll save at least some energy. It's a long way down to the Mekon. The game is not massive. Once you figure it out, you can probably complete it in about half an hour. The game does have a 1 hour timer, which I'm usually not a big fan of. It's more than enough time once you give it a few goes. Just keep one thing in mind, you might want to memorize that way back up, because without spoiling too much, you may be legging it real fast back to your ship later. Overall, I think this is a classic Commodore 64 game that everyone should at least play once. Excellent title screen music that's hard to forget. Great graphics that complement the comic book source material really well. Clever and interesting puzzles and great environments. The only negative is the clunky brawling sequences that could have been implemented much better. Overall though, a highly recommended action-adventure game. We now jump to 1988, a year where Die Hard introduced us to the best villain of all time.
You really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Rick Astley released Never Gonna Give You Up, which would later produce a whole generation of internet trolls. And after playing the hell out of the Tom Clancy classic game Red Storm Rising on my Commodore 64, attempted to read Clancy's then just released dense, a million-page epic book, Cardinal of the Kremlin, and failed at it spectacularly. But more importantly, Dan Dare 2, The Mekon's Revenge, was released again by Virgin Games. Dan's mission this time has him trying to stop the Mekon from launching a second attack on Earth. He's managed to upgrade the Treens to Super Treens, and has finished a massive ship to launch these fiends to Earth. Strangely, this time the game takes the form of a shoot-'em-up with light puzzle and maze elements, a completely different game from the first in every single way. So when you first start this game up, you'll be like, what? They turned this into a shoot-'em-up? But just give it a few minutes of play and you'll soon realize it's much more than that. Unlike the original, this game is split into 4 distinct levels, all taking place on the Mekon's motherships. And just like in the original, the whole game is crammed into a single load, which is quite impressive. No pesky multi-loading here, no siree. The graphics are very small and detailed with a really nice high-res look to them. The stages themselves also differ quite drastically in look and style, which gives it a feel of variety even though the gameplay remains unchanged. The gameplay is fast and furious, involving Dan flying around in his dodgy Flash Gordon scooter and blasting the Super Treen's stasis capsules all to hell. The Mekon and his Treens are constantly after you, but you also have help from your troops in blue. If you can avoid killing them by mistake, that is. Once all the Super Treens are killed, you have to boogie your way to the blast doors as the whole ship explodes. Rinse and repeat for the next level. The game plays at a really fast rate, but the controls are excellent and precise, with the hover mechanic feeling just right. It's extremely satisfying blasting the Treen henchmen. Another tip is when you start the level, do not shoot any of the Super Treens yet, and rather suss out the level and see where everything is, because the moment you shoot the first one, the self-destruct timer starts, only giving you a few minutes to do the job before escaping through the blast doors. The music is this game's only weak point. Oh wait, that's right. There is no music. At all. Anyway. It's a bit disappointing considering the excellent theme tune from the previous game. Couldn't that have somehow found its way into this? The sound effects are simple enough without being too annoying, so at least that's a plus. I originally played this in 1988 and thought it was pretty decent. I had just come off playing the original and it was still fresh in my mind, so this initially didn't come off as good. Playing it now though, decades later, I really like it a lot and enjoy the pace and quick action, and feel that this is a bit of a hidden gem of a C64 game. So overall, Dan Dare 2, The Mekon's Revenge is a pretty solid game. The positives are small but detailed graphics, fast and flowing gameplay, and really tight controls. The negatives are there's no music, and the game is pretty short once you figure out the levels. Overall though, I'd still recommend this to shoot-'em-up fans and even casuals. There's a lot of fun to be had here. Our final adventure with our square-jawed hero came in 1990, a year that saw us actually see the Grammy committee make Milli Vanilli bring back their Grammys over the lip-sync controversy. Clearly that doesn't happen anymore. The Neo Geo home console was released, and in order to own one, you would have to mortgage the island of Tasmania just to afford it. And 15-year-old me watched season 1 of Twin Peaks and learned the art of making a fine roast.
You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
But what we're interested in is Dan's final adventure in Dan Dare 3, The Escape, released by Virgin Mastertronic. The story goes that the Mekon finally caught Dan and is running experiments on him, but Dan, being the hero he is, escapes and now has to find his way off the Mekon's mothership. Jumping game genres yet again, Dan 3 takes the form of a platform action adventure shoot-'em-up, which seems pretty appropriate for the time. So as soon as the title screen comes up, you're greeted by this really awesome piece of music by Sid legend Jerome Tell, who I've covered in many episodes of Wired for Sound. It's not quite as good as the original's tune, but it's great to have music back nevertheless. The game is split into 5 levels of the Mekon ship, with the warp gate teleporters that need to be activated to send you from one platform to another. The sprites in this game are really big, well animated and colourful, as are the stages, although the variety in the stage graphics are minimal from ship to ship, so the variety is actually quite small. So the basics of the gameplay involve Dan needing to grab a bunch of fuel canisters to power his getaway vehicle. These are obviously scattered over the 5 levels of the Mekon ship. Flying around in your jetpack is the quickest way to go, but don't forget that thing also needs fuel. So blasting your way through the Mekon's mutants, finding fuel, and jumping in a warp gate to get to the next level is the basics of the gameplay. You also have computers spread out throughout the base to purchase new weapons and lives. The gameplay is much slower than the previous title. It's more about precision and making every shot count as you take out the bad guys and collect items. It's not as much fun as previous titles, and the challenge is far less. Like previously mentioned, the music is really quite good. It's just a pity it's only in the menus, because I think if they had the music in the actual gameplay, it would have made the game a lot more exciting. The sound effects are cool though, and have a really distinct sound. This is just another slam dunk of a soundtrack from Jerome Tell. So even though this game came out in 1990, I actually didn't play it until late 93, right at the tail end of my hardcore C64 days. I'd owned a Mega Drive for at least 2 years previous to that, so when I eventually got around to playing this, it just seemed like an average platform ROM. In retrospect though, it's a very well made game. One of the programmers on it was Dave Perry, who worked on the Mega Drive gems like Aladdin and Earthworm Jim. So the quality is definitely here, even though the game is just not as memorable as 1 or 2. So my overall thoughts on Dare 3 The Escape are as follows. Bold and colourful graphics, excellent music and sound effects. The negatives are extremely repetitive gameplay, a very short campaign, and really not much of a challenge for veterans. Overall, I think this game could be skipped in light of the other two. It's a decent game with great production values, but it still ends up feeling very repetitive and kind of forgettable. And so how does the Dare franchise fare up on the Commodore 64? I think overall quite good. 3 games, all 3 different styles, completely different genres. I think that's quite a bold step for a company to do that. I think it worked out quite well in the end. The first one is obviously like an adventure game, the second one is a kind of a shoot 'em up, and the third one is kind of an action platform kind of deal. All 3 of these games actually represent the time in which they were made very specifically, which is pretty cool. Dare, the first one's got that kind of Sierra adventure vibe. The second one, Dare 2, has got that kind of shoot 'em up late 80s vibe, and the early 90s one has got an NES kind of feel to it, very platform kind of action adventure kind of thing. They are very specific to whatever time they were made in. I think that's quite cool. I really like it. Out of all 3 of these, the third one for me is the weak link. It's not a bad game at all. The music is excellent, so are the graphics and everything. It just gets a little bit tedious after a while. You could say that about the second one as well. I've always had fun with it. It's just my personal opinion. And the first one is obviously brilliant. I think that one is just hands down the best in the series. I think it represents the comic books really well, all 3 of them actually, especially the first one. And it's definitely a game series you should seek out and give a go. And again, thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.